Rain hammered against the cracked window like an endless reminder that the world outside didn't care about his pain. The room was small, cold, and suffocating, a single bulb flickering in the corner as if it too had lost the will to shine. Ethan sat motionless at his desk, his fingers tracing the edges of the latest rejection letter. It wasn't his first, and deep down, he knew it wouldn't be his last. The words blurred on the page, but their meaning was clear enough. "We regret to inform you, another door closed." Another reminder that he was falling behind. His flat was silent except for the storm outside. No laughter, no music, just the haunting tick of a clock that seemed to mock him with every second. He glanced at the notebook beside him, the one with "Dreams Worth Fighting For" written across the cover in faded ink. It had once been his lifeline, pages filled with goals, plans, and quotes that kept him believing when no one else did. Now it just sat there collecting dust, much like the dreams it contained. He ran a hand through his hair and let out a shaky breath. He'd given everything, the sleepless nights, the sacrifices, the endless grind, and yet, here he was. Broke. Alone. Forgotten. Friends had stopped calling months ago. His parents' words echoed in his mind, "Maybe it's time to be realistic." The kind of phrase that sounds gentle but feels like a knife twisting in your chest. He stood up, pacing the room. The floorboards creaked beneath his bare feet, the air thick with frustration and regret. His reflection in the cracked mirror across the room stared back at him, tired eyes, hollow cheeks, shoulders slumped. The reflection of a man who'd once dreamed of conquering the world, now barely surviving it. "Is this it?" he whispered. "Is this what I've become?" The words hung in the air, fragile and heavy. He clenched his fists, his nails digging into his palms until they stung. There was a lump in his throat he couldn't swallow down, a mix of anger, shame, and exhaustion. He looked at the rejection letter again, then at the dozens more piled up on his desk. It wasn't just about the failed opportunities anymore, it was about what they represented. Every letter screamed the same message: "You're not good enough." Something inside him cracked. He slammed his fist against the desk, sending the letters flying. "Enough!" he roared, his voice trembling but powerful. It echoed through the walls, bouncing back at him like a challenge. "Enough of feeling sorry for myself. Enough of waiting for someone to save me." The room seemed to come alive with that declaration. He stood there, chest heaving, eyes burning. For the first time in months, he felt something, not hope, not motivation, something deeper, darker, more primal. He stared at the mirror again, locking eyes with the man who'd spent too long hiding behind excuses. "You've been soft," he hissed at his reflection. "You've been weak. You've let life kick you down and you just took it. You talk about dreams, but you don't fight for them. Not really." He grabbed the notebook from the desk, ripped out the first page, and threw it into the bin. "No more writing about dreams. From now on, I'll bleed for them." He tore another page and began to write, his hand shaking but determined. Each letter carved into the paper like a vow: become an absolute savage. He stared at the words, his heart pounding in his chest. They didn't feel like a slogan or a quote. They felt like truth, like a command. He dropped to the floor and started doing push-ups, counting each one out loud. 1, 2, 10, 20. His arms trembled, his body begged him to stop, but he refused. "Pain is my teacher now," he muttered through gritted teeth. Sweat dripped from his forehead, pooling on the dusty floor. He pushed harder. The burn in his chest, the sting in his muscles, they weren't punishment anymore. They were a promise. He stood up again, breathing heavily, and looked around the room. On the wall were posters of motivational speakers, quotes like, "Believe in yourself," and, "Success takes time." They'd once inspired him, but now they felt hollow. He tore them down one by one, ripping through the paper until his wall was bare. "No more empty words," he said under his breath. "No more waiting. No more wishing." He could feel the shift inside him. The man who'd been full of doubt was gone, replaced by something sharper, tougher. It wasn't about being angry at the world anymore. It was about becoming so strong, so relentless, that nothing could stop him, not pain, not failure, not fear. He walked to the window, looking out at the storm. The rain still poured, the thunder still rumbled, but it didn't feel oppressive anymore. It felt like an ally, fierce, wild, untamed. He pressed his hand against the cold glass and whispered, "From tonight, everything changes." He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. He didn't know how many more times he'd fall. But he did know this: he would never again be the man who gave up. He turned off the light and lay on the floor, not the bed. The floor was hard, uncomfortable, real, a perfect reminder that comfort had no place in his new life. As he closed his eyes, he could still hear the rain, but now it sounded different. It wasn't mocking him anymore. It was clapping for him, applauding the birth of something unstoppable. That night, in a small, forgotten flat, under the roar of a storm, Ethan buried the old version of himself. And in its place, something new was born. Something ruthless. Something powerful. A savage. The morning air bit against his skin as he stepped outside, the world still cloaked in silence. The sun hadn't even begun to rise, and the streets were empty, save for the faint hum of distant cars and the soft rhythm of his breathing. Ethan tightened the laces on his worn trainers, pulled his hoodie over his head, and began to run. His feet slapped against the wet pavement, echoing through the stillness like a heartbeat. Each stride was deliberate, each breath controlled. There was no music, no distractions, just the sound of his own determination cutting through the cold. This had become his new normal. While others slept, he worked. While others dreamed, he built. Every morning began before dawn, every night ended in exhaustion, but it didn't matter. The old Ethan would have complained, found excuses, waited for the right time. The new Ethan didn't wait, he acted. He wasn't chasing motivation anymore, he was chasing mastery. The first week was brutal. His body ached, his legs screamed, and his mind constantly whispered for him to stop. There were moments when the thought crept in, maybe you're still the same guy, maybe you'll fail again. But each time that thought appeared, he pushed harder. Again, he'd say to himself. Again, he'd repeat it until the pain turned into focus, until his weakness had no voice left. Days turned into weeks, and the transformation began, not just physically, but mentally. Ethan learned that the grind was lonely. The world didn't cheer for you when you trained in silence. No one saw the 5 a.m. runs, the sweat, the tears, the sacrifices. But that's where the real progress lived, in the moments no one was watching. That's where savages are made. He stopped checking social media. It had become poison to him, people flashing fake success, pretending life was perfect. He realized he didn't need likes, he needed results. So he deleted the apps, threw his phone into a drawer, and promised himself, I will build something real, even if no one notices. His days became a cycle of relentless focus. Early runs, cold showers, long hours of work, training in the gym until his body felt like it was on fire. Reading, studying, improving. There were no shortcuts, no comfort zones. Each day was a test, and he made sure to pass it. Sometimes, he'd walk past people who used to know him. They'd stop and stare, noticing the difference, the fire in his eyes, the posture, the quiet confidence. What happened to you, mate? They'd ask. You're different. He'd smile, wipe the sweat off his face, and simply say, I stopped waiting to be saved. Because that was the truth. For so long, he'd been waiting, for luck, for the right moment, for someone to believe in him. But now he understood. No one was coming. No one was going to hand him a better life. He had to become the kind of man who could take it. The grind became his therapy. The weights, the running, the struggle, it all became a language of its own. Every representative was a conversation with his old self, every mile a message to his fears, I'm still here, and I'm not quitting. He started training his mind as hard as his body. He cut out negativity like a disease. No complaining, no gossip, no wasting time. If something wasn't making him stronger, he let it go. He replaced music with audiobooks, scrolling with studying, comfort with challenge. Discipline became his new high. And slowly, the results came. Not the kind you could always see, but the kind you could feel. His confidence grew sharper. His focus deepened. He stopped reacting to problems and started solving them. The world didn't change, he did. There were days when everything hurt, when his legs felt like lead, when his lungs burned from the cold air, when his body wanted to collapse. But that was the moment he'd whisper, this is where most people quit. And that's exactly why I won't. He began to crave that pain, to seek it out. It became his compass. If it was uncomfortable, it meant he was growing. The grind wasn't punishment anymore, it was proof. Proof that he was becoming the man he said he would be. People around him didn't understand. They thought he was obsessed. They thought he'd lost his balance. But what they didn't see was that this obsession had saved him. He wasn't chasing success out of greed or vanity, he was chasing redemption. Redemption from the man he used to be. Every morning before training, he'd look in the mirror and say the same thing: no one cares. Work harder. It wasn't self-pity, it was power. Because when you accept that the world owes you nothing, you start taking control of everything. Months passed, and his reflection told a different story now. The tired, defeated man was gone. In his place stood someone harder, leaner, sharper. His eyes had a hunger that couldn't be faked. He'd become addicted to progress. Every small victory, a faster run, a heavier lift, a longer session, fueled him. And yet, he wasn't satisfied. He knew this was just the foundation. Being a savage wasn't about looking tough or acting fearless, it was about discipline. It was about showing up when you didn't feel like it. It was about being your own motivation when the world went silent. One night, after another grueling day, Ethan stood by his window, looking out over the quiet city. The same streets that had once made him feel trapped now looked different. They weren't his prison anymore, they were his battlefield. And he wasn't the victim anymore. He was the warrior. He whispered to himself, "You're not there yet. But you're closer than you've ever been." Then he smiled, a small, tired, but powerful smile, and went to bed knowing that tomorrow, he'd wake up and do it all again. Because savages don't stop when they're tired. They stop when they've conquered everything that once made them weak. The stage lights were blinding, but Ethan stood tall beneath them, shoulders squared, heart steady. Thousands of faces stared up at him, their cheers rumbling through the arena like thunder. He had dreamt of this moment once, long ago, when his world was small and filled with doubt. But now, standing there, he realized that the real victory wasn't the applause, it was everything that came before it. The blood, the pain, the loneliness, the grind that no one had seen. This was simply the reflection of what happens when you refuse to quit. As the crowd began to settle, he took a breath and gripped the microphone. The air was thick with anticipation. He could see people from all walks of life, young, old, broken, hopeful, waiting for him to say something that might change them. He wasn't a celebrity. He wasn't some miracle story. He was proof that the impossible becomes possible when you turn pain into power. "You all want to know how to win," he said, his voice echoing through the hall. "You have to become a savage." The audience erupted, clapping, shouting, whistling. But he raised his hand, and silence fell again. His tone grew calm, cold, and real. "I'm not talking about being cruel. I'm talking about being relentless. I'm talking about being the kind of person who doesn't wait for motivation, who doesn't need validation. The kind of person who does what needs to be done, no matter how hard it is." He paused, scanning the faces in front of him. Because the truth is, the world doesn't care about your excuses. It doesn't care about how tired you are, or how unfair things feel. It'll keep hitting you until you hit back harder. Ethan took a few steps forward, his voice gaining strength with each word. "There was a time I had nothing, no money, no support, no hope. I was broken, invisible, and angry. I waited for someone to rescue me, but no one came. And that's when it hit me, no one's coming. No one's going to fix your life. No one's going to hand you the dream. You've got to become the kind of person who fights for it, bleeds for it, and refuses to stop until it's yours." He could see heads nodding now, people leaning in. Most people give up the moment it hurts. They think pain means stop. But real warriors, real savages, they see pain as a signal to keep going. Because pain is the proof that you're breaking through. His eyes drifted to the front row, where a young man sat, head low, tears in his eyes. Ethan recognized that look. He'd worn it once himself. The look of someone who'd been beaten by life but still had a spark left. Ethan pointed towards him and said, "You, mate. You're stronger than you think. You just haven't met the version of yourself that never quits yet. But you will." A murmur spread through the crowd. Ethan smiled faintly and continued, "People see this stage, the lights, the success, and they think I'm lucky. But luck didn't get me here. Pain did. Discipline did. Refusal to quit did. I worked while others slept. I pushed when others rested. I stayed hungry when everyone else was comfortable. Because comfort kills dreams." He set the microphone down for a moment, letting the silence build again. Then he said softly, if you want to become unstoppable, you have to declare war. Not on the world, on your weakness. On your fear. On your excuses. Every day, wake up and choose to fight. Because the second you stop fighting, you start dying. The room was completely still. The kind of stillness that only truth can create. Ethan's gaze swept over the sea of faces, some inspired, some crying, all listening. Don't let anyone tell you it's too late. Don't let anyone convince you that you can't. They don't know the fire inside you. They don't know how many times you've fallen and got back up. They don't know the savage that lives in your soul. He raised his fist high in the air. Be ruthless with your excuses. Be fearless with your goals. Be disciplined when it's hard, and unstoppable when it hurts. You either fight for your dream, or you settle for your nightmare. The choice is yours. The crowd erupted again, louder this time, an explosion of energy, of understanding, of belief. Ethan stood still for a moment, soaking it in. But inside, he wasn't celebrating. Because he knew the journey never really ends. There's always another level, another battle, another storm to face. As the lights dimmed and the cheers continued, Ethan looked up toward the ceiling, whispering to himself, this isn't the finish line. This is just another beginning. Because true savages don't stop when they've made it. They keep going, until there's nothing left to prove but everything left to conquer.